What's going on, folks? So, I finished Oathbringer, and a lot of this is Dalinar's backstory for the most part. I'd say the main themes of this focus on him. We learn that he went from a warlord to a husband, which we finally get some backstory on his wife, and then he goes to father, then he goes to murderer, which he was already kind of a murderer, but he, this one he does kill more innocents than usual, I would say. And then he goes to drunk for a good while, it seems. And then back to finally his redeemed story arc. Now, a lot of it is him learning how to be a politician. After so far, we've really only seen experiences of him leading on the battlefield. And a lot of his development is mostly him learning how to bear the responsibility of his past sins, which seem to have crushed him up to this point. And here he's learning how to be a leader and bring people together. He's a bondsmith. And you get kind of a back and forth between him trying to unite some kingdoms and then Taravangian and some others, I don't know if that's how you say his name, trying to essentially work in the background and in the shadows to separate it and take over in front of Dalinar. A lot of the story also centers around trauma. Shallan is trying to navigate her way through her split personalities. She's learning how to control them, learning how to act within those personalities, using Veil and Radiant interchangeably, which is kind of also affecting who she says she likes, kind of. Veil and Radiant seem to lean towards Kaladin, whereas Shallan herself leans toward Adolin. And a lot of this is her just trying to kind of accept herself as all three in one. She is also learning how to control a lot of her powers, as we see in the Battle of Thaylen City, and she's becoming pretty powerful with them, honestly. So Kaladin's part of the story seems to have a slower burn than in the first two books. He kind of gets pulled into that protective despair when they are in Kholinar and everybody's fighting each other. And, he sees those Parshmen and also the wall guard that he has come to both find as friends. They begin fighting, killing each other, and he just kind of goes into just a breakdown. Adding on the fact that he watches Moash kill Elhokar, which did kind of suck. I did like Elhokar. He seemed like he was developing pretty well, but at least at the end, he realized a lot of his faults. Here comes Moash again, being one of the more unlikable characters of the story. And we'll see where he goes. He looks like he's killed a god now at the end with one of the heralds, so great. But ultimately on Kaladin, it is good to see a slower burn on his development. He was kind of on a roll with his buildup of gaining new powers, becoming more of a leader. But, once it's time to recite the third ideal, he just can't do it. So we'll save that for later, right? It's also good to get some history on Syl, that she's one of the original Honor Spren created by Honor. And that once the recreants happened and the Knights, the Radiants, forsook their oaths, that a lot of those Honor Spren became dead almost, or dormant in her case. Adolin's Spren seems to be a pretty good example of that, where it's like her eyes are gone and she's just kind of like in this weird state where she's following him around when they're in Shadesmar, which is also an interesting thing because we get a little development with him and her. It seems like he was able to summon her in about 7 heartbeats as opposed to 10. So about second and a half, maybe. I don't know. There was no sort of explanation for why he was able to do that. Can't wait to find out. But back to Kaladin. He finally gets to go back home and see his family, learns he has a new baby brother. I didn't see that one coming. He punches Rashon in the face, which was sick. I always love a good scene where, after he punches Rashon, the guards, they're kind of like, do we fight him or not? Should we? And in the context of the scene, you understand that the guards perceive him as way more of a threat than any random dude, hitting somebody would be. It's always a nice little scene added on to similar stories, if I could say that. And then he leaves and tells them, the Knights Radiant will not fail them this time. You could see that being like some dramatic scene within a TV show or a movie. Now, ultimately moving on from Kaladin, right? I love the turnaround for Seth. He is now following Dalinar after trying to kill him for the first couple books. And he has his talking sword, which I finally realized was Nightblood from Warbreaker, which is awesome because we finally get another entity or person jumping from world to world. So another example of Hoyd. Him not following the ideal of justice is pretty funny after killing so much royalty and so many people in the first couple books. I will say his interactions with Lift are a very, very good pair. He's like a brooder, whereas, and of course he would be, right? He's reflecting on what he's done in the past. And then Lift has like a very lackadaisical humor about everything, so those two mix really well. Now, like I brought up, the Thalen City battle was pretty awesome. And then you realize that the Parchment and Odium can control the Everstorm, so it doesn't even move on. It just sits there during the whole battle. And you see Odium is there. He might be projection, but he's there. And it affects people psychologically for sure, particularly Dalinar. It kind of raises the stakes, and like we talked about in the first video, he's working through an avatar in Amaram this time and transforms him into this giant monster. And the thrill is also in this battle, which it gets unleashed and turns all of Sadeas's troops against, their own people. And you've come to find it's a Spren who's kind of like a force of nature in a way and has had a close relationship with Dalinar throughout his past. Amaram, who is one, a monster, but two, also infected with the thrill. So is on like a bloodthirsty rampage. Kaladin and him have a massive battle, which is pretty cool. They're just going back and forth through a few scenes. And Rock ends up ending him with a shard bow, which is rad, but crazy because Rock said he wasn't going to be a fighter. So we'll see what comes out of that. Some developments from Renarin as well. He's kind of like a blind spot to Odium, which is, I'm kind of confused about it because if he has bonded one of the Void Spren, I would assume that Odium could see him more than anyone else, but apparently he can't see what Renarin is going to do, and Renarin comes to find that he doesn't see the future 100%. The future can change for him, so he's super relieved because he saw himself killing, his friends, his family, and it's also cool because he fights the Thunderclast, and you find out that he has a healing factor that's on par with pretty much Wolverine or something, where he just gets dominated and just immediately heals himself. So, we knew that he could heal others, but I didn't think that we knew it was going to be like that fast for him. Side note, it's still developing like he might be the underdog champion for Dalinar, which I still commit to it better be Kaladin. And in kind of a climactic moment of this book, Dalinar creates a perpendicularity and says, I am unity. He kind of bonds with Stormfather on a closer level, infuses everyone with Stormlight without the storm even needing to be there, and the realm of thought, spirit, and physical all unite, allowing Shalin, Kaladin, and all of them to move over from Shadesmar into the physical realm and kind of reinforce everybody. Now, his I am unity moment kind of seems like the intro of this is how you become a shard in a way. You almost become a characteristic in such a way from one specific action that's super impactful for everybody. So I'm wondering if that's how you get shards being a certain characteristic as their name, sort of. But also along with him being unity, he officially confronts his sins, tells Odium that he can't have his pain after Odium is trying to turn him to his side. Pretty close, by the way. He kind of accepts the fact, what kind of a person are you without the lessons learned? And kind of makes more of an impact on his thought of what's the most important step, right? The next one. Now, moving on to some of the developments that this story has shown us. You learn that humanity is the Voidbringers. They're not even native to Roshar, which, one, where did they even come from? Two, what do you do, right? What do you do when you're humans? You learn that your ancestors were the ones who invaded the Parshmen. The Parshmen are the original inhabitants of this world. But you can't just give up. You can't just become slaves. So you got to fight. And your sins are not the sins of your ancestors. I think we've all learned that at some point, hopefully. But ultimately, keep going. We also get a conversation between two of the heralds with Ash and Taln. Taln's not even upset that all of them betrayed him. He's basically saying that they gave humanity a chance to recover from all of the desolations that were happening. And I think at one point, it was like a year between each desolation. So we've had a couple thousand, which obviously humanity and the Parshmen themselves have all gotten to recuperate to a certain amount. So apart from humanity basically being aliens, the Radiants are back and on the rise. Dalinar is practically becoming a shard. Odium and the Parchment have to recover. Vinley and Renarin bond the opposite Spren. So we got some serious developments in the story. I'm almost done with Dawn Shard, so as soon as that's over, I might make a quick video, and then we're moving into Rhythm of War. So thanks y'all for tuning in. Appreciate it. Let me know your thoughts. Hope y'all have a great day, and God bless.